Hello everyone, my name's Sunsy Boy, and welcome to the shortest read I've done in a minute. It is just going to be 7 pages, and I'm going to say this right now, this is going to be more of a chopping block than anything. This is the afterword of the Metamorphosis, and its story, which, wow. But yeah, I still want to do this because I did the start, or the beforehand of the story, so now I want to do the afterword of the story. But yeah. So, without further ado, let's begin. Afterword, The Death of the Salesman by Susan Bernofsky. Kafka's celebrated novella, The Metamorphosis, died ver long, was written a century ago, in the late 1912, during which a period in which he was having difficulty making progress on his first novel. On November 17th, 1912, Kafka wrote to his fiancée Felice Baer. He was working on the story that came to me in the misery of lying in bed, and it was haunting him. He hoped to get it written down quickly. He hadn't yet realized how long it would be, as he felt it would turn out the best if he would write it in just 1 or 2 long sittings. But there were many interruptions, and it complicated the Felice several times. That the delays were damaging the story. 3 weeks later, it was finished, on December 7th, though it would be another 3 years before the story saw print. As we know from Mad Brock's diary, Kafka read his bug piece, Wazenschaft, aloud his friends on November 24th, 1912, the first section, and again on December 15th, people started talking about it, and Kafka received a query in the publisher Kurt Wolff on March 13, 1913, on the recommendation of Kafka's friend Franz Werfel. Franz Blee, the literary editor of the new avant-garde journal Die Wievenblätter, expressed interest, and Robert Musil wrote as well, soliciting the novella for more established Die Neue Rezendush, which it was technically too long for his magazine format. But months passed before Kafka cleaned manuscript ready for submission, and when World War I intervened, causing further delays, Musil was called up to serve, and because of the war, Blade decided to stop printing literary texts. In the spring of 1915, Rentschlichdale took over the editor-in-chief of Die Wiesenblätter, in which Max Brod's helped Kafka and the story here, and came out on October 15th, 1915. And then it appeared in December 1915, though dated 1916, as slender volume published by Kurt Wolff Verlag in Leipzig. The story's protagonist, Gregor Samsa, and the quintessential Kafka anti-hero, he has worked himself to the point of utter exhaustion to pay off his parents' debts, and a grotesque metamorphosis and a physical manifestation of his abstinence, and exactly as he transformed into. In Kafka's correspondence with the publisher, he admitted that it was an insect, not to be depicted in the jacket of the book, and although he was friends to the word bug, wanzi, and referring casually to the word, the language that appears in the novella itself carefully knows to avoid specificity. The infinite unhigers unhueris unzephyr, and the opening sentence poses one of the greatest challenges in the translator. It's above adjective ungulated, meaning monstrous or huge, and noun ungezephyr, or negations, virtual non-entities, prefixed by the ungezephyr, comes from the Middle High German ungezebär, a negation of the Old High German zebar, related to the Old English teber, meaning sacrifice or sacrificial animal, and ungezebär, then an unclean animal unfit for sacrifice. And Ungeziefer describes a class of nasty, creepy, crawly things. The word in German suggests primarily 6-legged creatures, though it was otherwise resembles the English word vermin, which refers primarily to rodents. Ungeziefer is also used formally the equivalent of bug, though incarnation is dirty, nasty bug. You wouldn't apply the word cute, helpful creatures like ladybugs in my translation. Gregor has transformed into some sort of monstrous insect, and some sort of attitude blurred the border of somewhat too specific insect. I think Kafka wanted us to see Gregor's new body in the condition of the same hazy focus in which Gregor himself discovers him. A new blurred focus applies in other aspects of the story. Although Vladimir Nazarov and his pension exited had mapped out the salesman flat in some detail, I am far from certain that Kafka himself, with the penchant and blurred perception of bewilderment, has much concern in the apartment's precise geography. And many rooms does the apartment have? Many, too many. Just as Gregor, lying on his back in the story opening two sentences, discovers that these many little legs waving in the air above him were both physical correlatives of life has gotten out of hand, Kafka is not even particularly attentive to the continuity of this cast of characters. Early on in the story, we see a maid give notice and flee, only to find her still working in the household several pages later, in fact, doing all the cooking, since now is the cook who quit. Except for the chairwoman, who still plays a starring role in the penultimate scenes. The household help is just part of the furniture of the story, like the cabinet that gets shifted to another room. Even the main characters tend to appear categorically named after their functions: father, mother, sister. Only one of them gets a name. Gretty rhymes with beta. But even she was usually referred to as sister, until the decisive moment near the end when she becomes instead of daughter, but defining all these characters through her relationship to Gregor. Kafka shyly allows Gregor's point of view to dominate the story even when he's not actually present in the scene being described. One Lady Muff was unable to preserve in the translation the theme of Ruhig. Ruhig denotes calm, peaceful, quiet, tranquil, at ease, and unruhig is opposite, starting from the unrich Traumen, troubled dreams. In the first sentence, the narrative oscillates between troubled and troubled, tranquil and harried, peaceful and unsettled. Since no one word in English fits well enough to context Kafka presence, I decided to translate the word in many different ways. But note when you are reading all these synonyms that you are watching a motif unfold. The post-metamorphosis activity that gives Gregor the greatest sense of freedom appears in the translation as crawling. He enjoys crawling around the walls and ceiling of the room. Ironically, the German verb klitschen, which also translates as to creep, has the additional meaning to cower. To klitschen before someone is to act fantastically toward him. In a sense, too, Gregor's new physical state appears the representation of his long-standing spiritual agedness. Finally, Gregor has only himself to blame for the wretchedness of the situation, since he was willingly accepted the wretchedness as it was thrust upon him. Like other of the Kafka's doomed protagonists, the heirs by failing to act instead of falling himself to acted upon. Gregor's Sasmith giant bug is a cartoonist subaltern of human being turned inside out. He was traded in the spine for exoskeleton, but even his armor like shell, carapace, and armor are the same word in German, Panzer. In no defense, once a suddenly powerful father starts pelting them with apples, an ironically biblical choice of weapon. Gregor is a salesman, but as he told himself, his own agency and dignity making him sell out through and through. For this reason, I occasionally use the word drummer, a commercial traveler, to describe his profession, referring back to another of his ilk, a hard-working drummer who landed the ash and might rest them. At Willie Loman as described by Arthur Miller in Death of the Salesman, 1949, the Metamorphosis is Kafka's own Death of the Salesman, which are all sad, grubby tragedy and all squalor, like Willie Loman. Gregor is a suicide. Though of a different sort, he dies of hunger, artist, perish in starvation with nothing tastes good to him anymore. Unlike Willie's, Gregor's death of his final surface, he performs to the benefit of his family. At the same time, Kafka's tragic tale, unlike Miller's, is often hilariously funny. I imagine Kafka laughing uproariously when reading his story to his friends. Gregor Nevati, one might call him gullibility, combines his earnest and the tendency to sound somewhat overwrought and assertions are perfectly risible. To bring out the side of the story, I emphasize the slight tone of hysteria in Gregor's voice, whether it seemed justified. The story was brutally comic in parts, but never more than at the moment, and revealed that, despite that, in fact, that Gregor might be living more than less an endured servant to pay off his servant's ancient debts. In fact, his family has plenty of money, not enough to allow him to stop working altogether, but a proper little nest egg. And although they are described as poor, they are never too hard to retain the services of at least one domestic servant. One last translation problem in the story is the title itself. Unlike the English Metamorphosis, the German word Verwandlung does not suggest a natural change in state associated with the animal kingdom, such as the change of a caterpillar to butterfly. Instead, this word from fairy tales is used to describe the transformation, say, of a girl's 7 brothers into swans. But the word metamorphosis refers to this too. Its first definition, the Oxford English Dictionary, is the action or process of changing in form, shape, or substance. Is especially transformation by supernatural beings. This is the sense in which it's used. For instance, a translation of Ovid as a title for its rich, complex story, it strikes me as the most luminous, suggestive choice. Finally, I would like to thank the friends and colleagues who helped me with suggestions and kind of editorial interventions while working on the translation: Barbara Ifler, Edith Grossman, Elliot Weinberger, Baron Mitchell, Chris Hockey, Richard Gurr, Emily Broman, Amanda Hong, and especially Sean Cotter. Glenn Hurts, and Tim Watson. I would also like to thank Carol Bemis, Thea Goodrich, and Alan Bellman and Era Schwala. New York, August 2013. And that is Metamorphosis. That was more of an explanation on how the book was more translated, more written, but you know what? I still felt personally that part should have been read. So, yeah, I'm sorry that you guys had to hear that, but, you know, I just felt like, you know, that should have been heard. Anyways, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. People like Big Fisher, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry for the weirdly short video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Oh, and I don't know what book we're reading next, but, actually, before I go, let's find out what book we're reading next. Never mind, I know what book we're reading next. We're reading a FNAF book next, so catch that on an episode for tomorrow. Bye-bye! Or, unless I somehow cut in between holes and then it becomes weird. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, bye-bye!